Hello and welcome to episode number 7 of the series dedicated to medieval Asia. We're diving into the Mongol Empire today, exploring its incredible rise and the impact it had on different parts of the world.
Yes, the Mongol Empire spanning from 1206 to 1368. It was the largest contiguous land empire in history. It's a fascinating case study, and how a seemingly insignificant group of nomadic people could conquer and rule such vast territories.
You're right, it's not like they had a blueprint from earlier empires to follow. Unlike the later empires of the sea like the European colonial powers, the Mongols were a land-based power. Their strength came from their mastery of horses and their strategic use of livestock.
Precisely. They relied on mobility and the ability to live off the land, which made them incredibly adaptable. Their military tactics, centered around highly skilled cavalry and archers, were devastatingly effective.
And it wasn't just their military skills. It seems that weather played a role too. Our sources mention a period of unusually favorable weather conditions between 1211 and 1225.
Yes, those 15 years saw wetter and warmer weather than usual in the Mongolian steppe. This created ideal conditions for their horses to breed and multiply, giving them a significant logistical advantage in their campaigns.
However, like all empires, the Mongols eventually faced internal divisions. By 1260, the empire began to fragment, leading to several successor states.
Right, but their influence didn't disappear overnight. Mongol rule persisted in China with the Yuan dynasty, in Persia with the Timurid Empire, and even indirectly in India with the later Mughal Empire, founded by descendants of the Mongols.
It's amazing how a relatively short-lived empire could have such a lasting impact on so many different regions. Let's start by looking at Central Asia, the heartland of the Mongol Empire.
It all began with Genghis Khan uniting various nomadic tribes. The Merkits, Tatars, Karaites, Turks, Naimans, and of course the Mongols themselves. This unification was the foundation upon which he built his empire.
It seems they didn't conquer every group, though. The sources mention the Uyghurs of Kocho, a Buddhist people, joining the empire peacefully.
Yes, the Uyghurs saw an opportunity to benefit from Mongol protection and trade networks. Their inclusion highlights that the Mongols weren't always about brute force. They could be shrewd diplomats when it suited them.
But there's no denying the role of military conquest in their expansion. Their victories against the Khorakitai and the Khwarezmian Empire were particularly significant.
Absolutely. Those victories secured their control over key trade routes and gave them access to vast new resources. However, these conquests came at a heavy price for the people who resisted. Our sources describe the utter devastation of cities and towns in Islamic Central Asia and Persia.
The account of the Mongol conquest of Urgench is particularly chilling. It said that each Mongol warrior was ordered to execute 24 people after the city fell. Given the size of their army, that could mean almost 500,000 deaths in that one city alone.
It's a stark reminder of the brutality that often accompanied Mongol conquests. They used fear as a weapon, making sure that any resistance was met with swift and merciless retribution.
The sources also describe their divide and conquer tactics. They used this effectively against the Alans and the Cumans, turning them against each other before incorporating the defeated warriors, like the Alans, into their own ranks.
That was a key part of their strategy. They weren't just interested in destroying their enemies. They wanted to absorb their skills and manpower, constantly strengthening their forces with every victory.
They also established military colonies in places like Kocho and Beshbalik, populated by Chinese soldiers and governed by Chinese generals. These colonies served as strategic outposts, integrating these conquered territories into the empire.
You see, the Mongol conquest of Central Asia had consequences that extended far beyond the region itself. For instance, the Kipchaks, also known as the Cumans, played a critical role in the Mamluk resistance against the Mongols in the Middle East.
That's right, the Cumans had first-hand knowledge of Mongol tactics. They were instrumental in the Mamluk victory at the Battle of Ain Jalut, the first decisive defeat inflicted on the Mongols.
Meanwhile, many Cumans fled westward, seeking refuge from the Mongol advance, ending up in places like Hungary. This migration had a significant impact on the demographics and culture of those regions.
So the Mongol conquests created a ripple effect, displacing populations and influencing the course of history, even in areas they didn't directly conquer. Now let's turn our attention to West Asia, where the Mongols faced another formidable foe.
Their campaigns in West Asia took them through what are now modern-day Iran, Iraq, the Caucasus, and even into parts of Syria and Turkey. They even launched raids as far as Palestine.
One of the most significant events in this region was the Siege of Baghdad in 1258. This wasn't just any city. Baghdad had been the center of Islamic power for 500 years.
The Mongol siege marked a turning point in Islamic history. The city was captured and sacked, its libraries and palaces destroyed, and countless lives lost.
It's interesting to note that Hulagu Khan, the Mongol leader who led the conquest of the Middle East, brought along 1,000 squads of Chinese engineers to support his campaigns. It shows how they integrated expertise from different parts of their empire.
Yes, they were pragmatic rulers, understanding the importance of logistics and technology in their military endeavors. But despite their successes, the Mongols weren't invincible in West Asia. They faced a powerful adversary in the Mamluks of Egypt.
That's right, the Mamluks, a well-trained and disciplined military force, managed to check the Mongol advance at the Battle of Ain Jalut in 1260. This marked a significant setback for the Mongols, proving that they were not unbeatable.
Now let's shift our focus to East Asia, a region of immense strategic importance for the Mongol Empire.
Genghis Khan and his descendants saw the conquest of China as a major objective. They launched a series of campaigns, gradually bringing the region under their control.
They started by subjugating the Western Xia and defeating the Jin dynasty. Eventually, they conquered the Song dynasty, bringing all of China under Mongol rule.
The sources mention that in 1253, the Mongols made the Kingdom of Dali a vassal state after its king defected to their side. This seems to be a recurring theme. They were adept at exploiting internal divisions within their enemies.
Indeed, they were master strategists, using a combination of military might and political maneuvering to achieve their objectives. They weren't just brute conquerors, they understood the importance of alliances and strategic partnerships.
They also launched multiple invasions of Korea, eventually forcing its capitulation. However, their attempts to conquer Japan were unsuccessful. Their fleets were devastated by powerful storms, which the Japanese called kamikaze, meaning divine wind.
Those failed invasions show that even the mighty Mongol Empire had its limitations. The sea, in this case, proved to be a barrier they couldn't overcome.
The Mongol conquest of China culminated in the establishment of the Yuan dynasty by Kublai Khan in 1271. This marked the beginning of a new era in Chinese history.
The Yuan dynasty was a fascinating period of cultural exchange and political innovation. The Mongols, despite their foreign origins, adopted many aspects of Chinese governance and incorporated Chinese officials into their administration.
We see this reflected in the military organization of the Yuan dynasty. They created the Han army from former Jin troops and the newly submitted army from former Song soldiers, incorporating them into their forces.
This shows their pragmatism. They didn't try to completely dismantle existing structures. Instead, they adapted and integrated them to suit their needs.
The sources also point out that the Mongol force sent to invade southern China was significantly larger than the one sent to the Middle East in 1256. This shows how much importance they placed on conquering all of China.
Yes, China's vast resources and strategic location made it a cornerstone of their empire. They also extended their control over Tibet, establishing the Bureau of Buddhist and Tibetan Affairs to govern the region.
They even invaded Sakhalin Island, showing their ambitions beyond the Chinese mainland. Korea, under the Goryeo dynasty, became a semi-autonomous vassal state of the Yuan dynasty for about 80 years.
The Mongol impact on East Asia was profound and multifaceted. They brought about significant changes in political structures, military organization, and even cultural practices.
Now let's explore their expansion into North Asia, a vast region with its own unique challenges and opportunities.
By 1206, Genghis Khan had achieved the unification of all Mongol and Turkic tribes in Mongolia and southern Siberia. This was a remarkable feat, laying the groundwork for their expansion further north.
His son, Joki, continued the push northward, subjugating various Siberian forest peoples, including the Uriankai, Oirats, Barga, Khakas, Buryats, Tuvans, Koritumid, and Yenisei Kyrgyz.
These conquests brought vast swaths of Siberia under Mongol control. Jeji organized these newly conquered Siberian tribes into 3 tumans, which were military units of 10,000 men each. This demonstrated their capacity for efficient military organization and integration of diverse groups.
Genghis Khan rewarded his loyal companions with territories in Siberia. For example, he granted the lands along the Irtysh River inhabited by the Tlingit and Tolos peoples to his old comrade Korchi.
This practice of granting land and titles to loyal followers was key to maintaining the loyalty of Mongol nobles and ensuring the stability of the empire.
After the initial stages of the Mongol conquest of the Jin dynasty, Genghis Khan established a settlement of Chinese craftsmen and farmers at Kemchik. This indicates their efforts to promote economic development and integration in conquered territories.
Right, they weren't just focused on military conquest. They also understood the importance of economic infrastructure and skilled labor in maintaining their vast empire.
It seems that the Great Khans favored certain tribute items from Siberia, such as gerfalcons, furs, women, and Kyrgyz horses.
Those items reflected the resources and skills of the Siberian people. The gerfalcons were prized for their hunting abilities. Furs provided warmth in the harsh climate. Kyrgyz horses were known for their speed and endurance. And sadly, women were often taken as concubines or servants.
Western Siberia came under the rule of the Golden Horde, one of the successor states of the Mongol Empire. The descendants of Orda Khan, the eldest son of Jochi, directly governed this region.
To facilitate the collection of tribute and communication in the challenging terrain of western Siberia, the Mongols set up a network of yam stations. These relay posts for messengers and travelers were often equipped with dog sleds, highlighting their adaptation to the harsh Siberian environment.
In 1270, Kublai Khan, the founder of the Yuan dynasty, sent a Chinese official and a new group of settlers to govern the Kyrgyz and Tuvan Basin areas. This shows the Yuan dynasty's efforts to extend its administrative control over even distant regions.
However, their control in Siberia wasn't absolute. From 1275 onward, Kaidu, a grandson of Ogedei Khan, occupied parts of central Siberia, challenging the authority of the Yuan dynasty.
It seems internal conflict was a recurring challenge for the Mongols, even at the height of their power.
Yes, despite their impressive military achievements, maintaining unity within such a vast and diverse empire was a constant struggle. In 1293, the Yuan dynasty sent an army led by the Kipchak general Tutu to reclaim the territories occupied by Kaidu.
So the Mongols were engaged in a delicate balancing act. They had to consolidate their power while also dealing with internal rivalries and external threats.
It's a testament to their administrative skills and military prowess that they managed to hold such a vast empire together for as long as they did. Now let's turn our attention westward to Eastern and Central Europe, where the Mongols left a lasting mark on history.
Their expansion into these regions was marked by devastating campaigns against Volga, Bulgaria, and Kievan Rus. This paved the way for their incursions into Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, and other territories.
The Mongols' military campaigns in Eastern and Central Europe were brutal and destructive, leaving behind a trail of devastation. Their impact on these regions was profound, reshaping political landscapes and leaving a legacy of fear and resentment.
Over a 3-year period from 1237 to 1240, they razed major Russian cities to the ground, with the notable exceptions of Novgorod and Fis. Giovanni da Piandel-Carpen, the Pope's envoy to the Mongol Great Khan, witnessed the aftermath of the invasion of Kiev in 1246.
He described a scene of utter devastation, with countless skulls and bones scattered throughout the ruined city. Kiev, once a thriving metropolis, was reduced to a shadow of its former self, with only a few hundred houses remaining.
The Mongol invasions triggered unprecedented population displacement in these regions. People fled their homes in terror, seeking refuge from the advancing Mongol hordes.
The sheer scale of the violence and destruction unleashed by the Mongols had a profound psychological impact on the people of Eastern and Central Europe. The memory of these invasions would linger for centuries.
Some historians suggest that the violence and upheaval caused by the Mongol invasions contributed to a decline in numerical skills among elites in Eastern Europe. This decline might have played a role in the Great Divergence, the widening gap in economic development between Europe and other parts of the world.
It's a complex and debated theory, but it highlights the long-term consequences of the Mongol conquests. They didn't just impact the immediate political landscape, they also potentially influenced the course of economic development in these regions.
Now let's shift our attention southward to South Asia, where the Mongols faced a different set of challenges and opportunities.
The Mongols launched multiple invasions into the Indian subcontinent between 1221 and 1327. They managed to occupy parts of northwestern South Asia for several decades. However, their attempts to penetrate deeper into India met with fierce resistance.
They were unable to advance beyond the outskirts of Delhi and were eventually repelled from the interior of India.
The geography and climate of India, with its dense jungles and scorching heat, posed significant challenges for the Mongols. They also faced determined resistance from local rulers who were familiar with the terrain and could mobilize their forces effectively.
Despite their failure to conquer the Indian heartland, their presence in northwestern South Asia left its mark. Centuries later, the Mongol Empire, founded by Babur, who had Mongol ancestry, would establish a powerful presence in India.
The Mughal Empire, while distinct from the Mongol Empire, inherited some of its administrative and military traditions, demonstrating the enduring influence of the Mongols even in regions they did not directly conquer.
Now, let's explore the Mongol impact on Southeast Asia, a region known for its diverse cultures and vibrant trade networks.
Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty launched an invasion of Burma between 1277 and 1287, leading to the collapse of the Pagan Kingdom, a major power in the region.
However, a subsequent Mongol invasion in 1301 was successfully repelled by the Mincing Kingdom. This demonstrates the resilience of Southeast Asian powers in the face of Mongol aggression.
The Mongols also attempted to conquer Vietnam and Java, but were ultimately unsuccessful. Despite their military setbacks, many Southeast Asian kingdoms chose to pay tribute to the Mongols to avoid further conflict.
So even in regions where they didn't achieve complete conquest, the Mongols exerted significant influence. Their reputation for military might and ruthlessness preceded them, prompting many rulers to seek accommodation rather than confrontation.
The Mongol invasions, even when unsuccessful, had lasting repercussions for Southeast Asia. They contributed to the rise of major Thai states such as Lan Na, Sukhothai, and Lanzang.
These states were established by Thai people who had migrated from southern China, driven in part by the turmoil caused by the Mongol conquests. This migration led to significant demographic and cultural shifts in the region.
The Mongol impact on Southeast Asia, therefore, was a mix of direct military intervention, indirect political influence, and long-term demographic shifts.
Now, when discussing the Mongol Empire, it's impossible to ignore the immense human cost of their conquests.
Yes, estimating the exact death toll is challenging due to limited and often unreliable historical records, but it's clear that the Mongol conquests resulted in widespread death and suffering.
Estimates range from 20 to 60 million deaths between 1206 and 1405, excluding deaths caused by the plague. It's important to acknowledge that these figures are based on interpretations of historical sources, and the methodology used has been subject to debate.
Nevertheless, there is no denying that the Mongols' reliance on siege warfare, their ruthless tactics, and the spread of disease in their wake led to a staggering loss of life. Their impact on global demographics was significant.
It's a stark reminder of the destructive power of war and the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition. The Mongol Empire's legacy is complex and multifaceted.
It's a story of incredible military achievements, political innovation, and cultural exchange. But it's also a story of brutality, destruction, and immense human suffering. Understanding the Mongols requires us to grapple with these contradictions.
It's a fascinating and challenging period of history, one that continues to captivate and intrigue us today. Now, before we move on to explore the Mongols' impact in more detail, I'd like to pose a question to our listeners.
What aspects of the Mongol Empire's rise and fall do you find most compelling, and why?
Please share your thoughts and comments, and stay tuned for the next part of our deep dive into the Mongol Empire, where we'll explore the intricacies of their military organization, their approach to governance, and the lasting impact of their conquests on the world.
We look forward to continuing this exploration with you. The Mongol army was truly a force to be reckoned with. One key factor in their success was their military organization, which was highly disciplined and adaptable.
Our sources mention the Tumen as the basic unit of their army. Can you tell us more about this?
Certainly. A tumen consisted of 10,000 men. It was further divided into smaller units of thousands, hundreds, and tens, creating a hierarchical command structure that allowed for efficient communication and coordination on the battlefield.
This decimal system seems very practical, allowing for flexibility and rapid deployment of troops.
Precisely. It also allowed them to quickly integrate soldiers from conquered armies, further strengthening their forces. They were pragmatic in their approach, incorporating diverse elements and adapting their tactics as needed.
The sources highlight the Mongol cavalry as the backbone of their military might. We often hear about their incredible horsemanship and archery skills.
Indeed. Mongol warriors were trained from a young age to ride and shoot. They were masters of mounted warfare, capable of covering vast distances quickly and launching devastating attacks. Their horses, bred for endurance and agility, were essential to their success.
The Mongols weren't limited to just light cavalry, though. They also had heavily armored units, didn't they?
Yes, they utilized both light and heavy cavalry, providing them with tactical flexibility. The light cavalry was used for scouting, raiding, and harassing the enemy, while the heavy cavalry, clad in armor, formed the shock troops for decisive charges breaking through enemy lines.
Their integration of foreign troops into their armies is also noteworthy. It seems they didn't just rely on Mongol warriors.
Absolutely. They incorporated soldiers from conquered populations, adding to their numerical strength and diversity of skills. For example, they incorporated Chinese engineers who were skilled in siege warfare, as well as Turkic archers known for their accuracy and firepower.
This willingness to adapt and integrate expertise from different cultures seems to be a recurring theme in the Mongol Empire's success. They weren't bound by tradition or rigid military doctrines.
Now let's talk about their mastery of siege warfare, a crucial element of their military successes. The Mongols were adept at overcoming even the most formidable fortifications. They adopted and adapted siege techniques from various cultures, including China, Persia, and the Islamic world.
The engineers were skilled in constructing various siege engines such as catapults, trebuchets, and battering rams, weren't they?
Indeed. They also employed sophisticated tactics such as undermining walls, setting fires, and diverting rivers to weaken the defenses of their enemies. The Mongol siege of Baghdad in 1258 is a prime example of their mastery of siege warfare.
Baghdad was considered one of the most fortified cities in the world at that time, yet it fell to the Mongols relatively quickly.
Their use of siege engines combined with their effective tactics and psychological warfare proved too much for the defenders. The fall of Baghdad was a major turning point in Islamic history, marking the decline of the Abbasid Caliphate.
But their most significant advantage in siege warfare was perhaps their use of gunpowder.
Yes, the Mongols acquired gunpowder from China and quickly recognized its potential. They developed gunpowder weapons such as cannons and rockets, which gave them a decisive edge in sieges. The psychological impact of these weapons was immense, terrifying defenders with their deafening roar and destructive power.
Their adoption of gunpowder is another example of their pragmatism and willingness to embrace new technologies. It's no wonder they were able to achieve such remarkable military successes.
Now, beyond their military achievements, it's essential to understand the economic impact of the Mongol Empire. Their conquest had a profound influence on trade and commerce across Eurasia.
The sources frequently mention the Pax Mongolica, a period of relative peace and stability within their vast territories. How did this impact trade?
The Pax Mongolica facilitated the revival of the Silk Road. The Mongols provided safe passage for merchants and travelers, encouraging trade between East and West. They established trading posts, inns, and relay stations along the Silk Road, making travel safer and more efficient.
This revival of trade must have had significant economic benefits for both the Mongols and the people living within their empire.
Indeed. They also introduced practices that streamlined trade. For instance, they standardized weights and measures, simplifying transactions and reducing disputes. They also adopted paper currency inspired by Chinese practices, which facilitated trade and lessened reliance on bulky coins.
These innovations contributed to a more integrated Eurasian economy, with goods, ideas, and technologies flowing more freely across vast distances.
The Mongols also encouraged the development of new technologies such as improved shipbuilding and navigation. This spurred maritime trade between China, Southeast Asia, and the Indian Ocean region, further expanding their economic influence.
It seems the Mongols were not just conquerors, but also facilitators of trade and economic growth. Their policies had a lasting impact on global trade patterns, connecting different parts of the world and fostering the exchange of goods and ideas. Now let's consider the social impact of the Mongol conquests, which were undoubtedly transformative for many societies.
The Mongol conquest had a profound impact on social structures, sometimes disrupting existing hierarchies and replacing them with their own.
For instance, in China, they placed themselves at the top of the social hierarchy, followed by other Mongol and Central Asian groups, relegating the native Chinese population to a lower status.
That's right. However, in other regions, they adopted a more pragmatic approach, incorporating local elites into their administration to minimize resistance and maintain stability. This flexibility in governance was a key factor in their ability to rule such a diverse empire.
The sources also mention their policy of religious tolerance. How did this influence the social fabric of their empire?
The Mongols, while having their own belief systems, were generally tolerant of different religions, allowing for the coexistence of Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and other faiths within their empire. This tolerance, partly pragmatic and partly stemming from their nomadic traditions, helped reduce religious conflicts and promoted cultural exchange.
Their conquests also led to significant population movements, didn't they?
Yes, people fled their homes to escape the violence of war, and some were forcibly relocated as the Mongols consolidated their control over various regions. These displacements had long-lasting demographic and social consequences, altering the cultural and ethnic makeup of many areas.
The Mongol Empire's social impact was a complex and multifaceted phenomena, varying across different regions and time periods. It's clear, however, that their conquests brought about significant changes to the social fabric of the societies they encountered.
Now let's delve into the cultural legacy of the Mongol Empire, which is often overlooked but incredibly fascinating. The Mongols' conquest, despite their destructive aspects, also played a significant role in facilitating cultural exchange across Eurasia.
Our sources mention the Mongol court as a meeting point for various cultures, attracting artists, scholars, and craftsmen from across the empire.
Indeed, the Mongol court was a melting pot of cultures where ideas, artistic styles, and technologies were shared and exchanged. They patronized the arts and sciences, supporting the creation of magnificent works of architecture, painting, and literature. This patronage helped preserve and transmit knowledge across different cultural spheres.
It seems they weren't just interested in acquiring wealth and territory, but also in fostering intellectual and artistic pursuits.
Yes, they were open to new ideas and influences. This receptiveness is reflected in their own art and architecture, which often incorporated elements from different cultures they had encountered. For instance, they adopted Chinese painting styles, Persian literary forms, and Islamic architectural motifs, creating unique hybrid forms.
Their role in the spread of technologies such as gunpowder, printing, and papermaking should not be underestimated. These innovations had a profound impact on the development of societies around the world, contributing to major advancements in communication, warfare, and knowledge dissemination.
Absolutely, their impact on technological diffusion was significant. Their vast empire, with its interconnected trade routes and relatively stable political environment, facilitated the spread of these technologies far and wide.
The Mongol Empire's cultural legacy, therefore, is a testament to the power of cross-cultural exchange. Even amid conquest and conflict, they inadvertently fostered a flow of ideas and innovations that had a lasting impact on the world.
Now, as we conclude this part of our deep dive into the Mongol Empire, it's important to reflect on the enduring significance of this historical period. Their conquests were a pivotal moment in world history, shaping the political, economic, social, and cultural landscapes of vast regions.
Their empire, though relatively short-lived, left an indelible mark on the course of human civilization. Their military prowess, political organization, and the cultural exchanges they facilitated had far-reaching consequences that continue to resonate today.
The Mongol Empire serves as a reminder of the interconnectedness of different parts of the world and the enduring impact of historical events. Their story challenges us to rethink our understanding of empires and their legacies, acknowledging both their achievements and their devastating consequences.
It's a story of incredible ambition, both constructive and destructive, that continues to fascinate and challenge us. Now, before we move on to explore the Mongol Empire's decline and its ultimate legacy, we'd like to hear from our listeners.
Given what we've discussed so far, what aspects of the Mongol Empire's rise and impact do you find most surprising or thought-provoking?
Please share your insights with us and join us for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll examine the factors that led to the empire's fragmentation and explore its lasting impact on the world.
The Mongol Empire, despite its vast reach and seemingly unbreakable grip on power, ultimately succumbed to internal strife and external pressures. The seeds of its fragmentation were sown within its very structure.
That's an interesting point. We often focus on the Mongols' conquests, but their ability to maintain such a vast and diverse empire is equally fascinating. What were the key factors that led to its decline?
One crucial factor was the succession process. Genghis Khan's death in 1227 triggered a power struggle among his sons and grandsons. The empire, lacking a clear and established mechanism for succession, was vulnerable to internal conflict.
So the very system that allowed them to conquer so effectively a decentralized structure with powerful regional leaders also became a source of instability in the long run.
Precisely. As the empire expanded, different factions emerged, each vying for control. This internal rivalry weakened the central authority and eventually led to open conflict.
Sources mention Kaidu, a grandson of Genghis Khan, who challenged Kublai Khan's authority and controlled parts of Central Asia for decades.
Yes, Kaidu's rebellion is a prime example of the internal divisions that plagued the empire. These conflicts drained resources, diverted military manpower, and weakened the Mongols' ability to maintain control over their vast territories.
In addition to internal strife, the Mongols also faced challenges from external forces, didn't they?
Absolutely. The Mongols, despite their military prowess, were not invincible. They faced determined resistance from various groups, including the Mamluks in Egypt, the Vietnamese, and the Japanese.
We discussed the Mamluk victory at the Battle of Ain Jalut in 1260, which marked a significant setback for the Mongols in the Middle East.
Right, the Mamluks, with their well-trained army and strategic use of terrain, inflicted a decisive defeat on the Mongols, effectively halting their westward expansion.
The Mongols also faced stiff resistance in Southeast Asia. Their invasions of Vietnam were ultimately unsuccessful, despite repeated attempts.
The Vietnamese under the Tran dynasty employed guerrilla warfare tactics and effectively utilized their knowledge of the local terrain to repel the Mongol invaders. They even used a clever tactic of positioning their warships with underwater spikes to damage the Mongol fleet.
The failed Mongol invasions of Japan are also well known. The kamikaze, or divine wind, as the Japanese call the typhoons that wrecked the Mongol fleets, played a crucial role in their defense.
While the role of the typhoons was significant, we shouldn't downplay the Japanese samurai's military preparedness and their skilled use of coastal defenses.
These examples demonstrate that the Mongols, despite their formidable reputation, were not unbeatable. They could be defeated by well-prepared opponents who understood their weaknesses and exploited local advantages.
The combination of internal divisions and determined resistance from external forces eventually led to the fragmentation of the Mongol Empire. By the mid-14th century, the once unified empire had splintered into several successor states, each pursuing its own interests.
The Yuan dynasty in China collapsed in 1368, overthrown by a rebellion led by Zhu Yuanzhang, who established the Ming dynasty.
The Golden Horde in Russia disintegrated into smaller khanates, eventually falling to the rising power of Moscow.
And the Ilkhanate in Persia faced internal strife and eventually succumbed to the Timurids, a new power led by Timur, who claimed descent from Genghis Khan.
The fragmentation of the Mongol Empire marked the end of an era. However, their impact on the world was far from over. They left behind a complex and enduring legacy, one that continues to shape our understanding of history.
Now let's delve into that legacy. We've discussed their military innovations, their political organization, and their role in facilitating trade and cultural exchange. But what are the long-term consequences of their empire?
One lasting impact was the redrawing of political boundaries. The Mongols' conquests led to the formation of new states and empires, reshaping the political map of Eurasia.
Their influence can be seen in the rise of the Ottoman Empire, which emerged from the remnants of the Seljuk Sultanate of Lum after its conquest by the Mongols.
The Mongol conquest also had a profound impact on trade routes. The Silk Road, revitalized under the Pax Mongolica, continued to flourish even after the empire's decline, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies between East and West for centuries.
They also introduced new technologies and ideas that spread throughout Eurasia, such as gunpowder, paper-making, and printing. These innovations had a transformative effect on warfare, communication, and the dissemination of knowledge.
Their impact on cultural exchange was also significant. The Mongol courts were centers of cosmopolitanism, where people from diverse backgrounds interacted and exchanged ideas. This led to the fusion of artistic styles, literary traditions, and scientific knowledge.
However, it's important to acknowledge the devastating consequences of their conquests. The immense loss of life, the destruction of cities, and the displacement of populations left deep scars on many societies.
Their reliance on brutal tactics, their use of siege warfare, and the spread of disease in their wake had a devastating impact on the demographics of social structures of many regions.
The Mongol Empire's legacy is a tapestry woven with threads of both progress and destruction, innovation and brutality. Their story is a reminder of the complexities of history and the enduring impact of empires, both positive and negative.
It challenges us to grapple with the contradictions of human nature, the capacity for both great achievements and terrible acts of violence. The Mongol Empire, despite its relatively short lifespan, left an indelible mark on the world, one that continues to fascinate and provoke debate among historians and enthusiasts alike.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Mongol Empire. We've explored their meteoric rise, their vast empire, and their eventual decline, as well as the complex and enduring legacy they left behind.
We hope this exploration has provided you with a deeper understanding of this fascinating and pivotal period in history.
We encourage you to share your thoughts and comments about this episode, and to continue exploring the rich and multifaceted history of the Mongol Empire. Don't forget to follow us for new episodes of the series dedicated to medieval Asia.
Thank you for listening, and we look forward to joining you on future deep dives into history's most intriguing stories.